Ever since I've discovered the gym, I've wanted to develop an aesthetic, well-proportioned physique. Wide shoulders, thin waist, and big arms. I wanted to build a physique the same way that Michelangelo sculpted his statues. Now, we might not look as good as the Greek statues, but we can get pretty damn close. And the great news is, it's actually quite simple. Not easy, but straightforward. The first thing to cover is what exactly makes a physique aesthetic. So there are 4 critical elements of an aesthetic physique: V-taper, bookshelf chest, six-pack abs, and legs to show you don't skip leg day. In terms of how to actually develop your physique, I want you to think of your physique as a sculpture. This sounds corny as fuck, but please just bear with me. Basically, step 1 is to start adding clay. The easiest way to do this is to eat in a caloric surplus where your calories in are greater than your calories out. This is the most anabolic state for your body, which means that eating in a caloric surplus puts you in the optimal environment for muscle growth. In terms of how fast you should bulk, basically how big your caloric surplus should be, this is highly dependent on how much experience you have in the gym. So I recommend newbies to always hit 1 dirty bulk where you just eat anything in sight. Yes, you'll gain some fat, but then you also build a lot of insurance that you gain as much muscle as possible. Now, the more advanced of a lifter you are, the less there is to gain from a dirty bulk. So in the case of an advanced lifter, I recommend lean bulking or eating fewer calories. The way I like to think about it is there's a negative correlation between your training experience and rate of weight gain. So the more experienced you are, the slower you should bulk. Step number 2 is the chip away. So if you think about a sculpture, first you put the clay on and then you start chipping away to fine tune the details. After you've bulked for a while, you'll want to hit a diet, aka be in a caloric deficit where your calories in are less than your calories out. The easiest way to be in a caloric deficit is to either eat less or move around more. From an eating perspective, you'll want to eat at a daily deficit of 500 calories. So if your maintenance calories is 2,500, subtract 500 to get 2,000 calories per day. And the reason for 500 calories is because if you multiply 500 by 7, which is how many days there are in the week, you get a 3,500 calorie weekly deficit, and that equals 1 pound of fat. So in order to eat in a caloric deficit, you need to know your maintenance calories, and I recommend just using an online calculator. This will serve as a good starting point, and then you can just monitor your weight and see, okay, if I'm eating this amount, how is my weight changing? And just by kind of taking an iterative approach, you can figure out your maintenance calories, basically how many calories you need to eat to maintain your weight. In terms of macros or macronutrients, basically carbs, fat, and protein, I recommend eating 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein. So if you weigh 165 pounds, 165 grams of protein per day. And then you want to take your total calories and multiply it by 15 to 25% and divide that by 9. So that basically gives you how many grams of fat you want to eat. And then you just want to allocate the remaining calories to carbs. If you want a more simple approach, you can just aim for a total caloric intake and then just have a daily protein goal. So that's a much simpler way than calculating your macros, but either way works. It just depends on how precise you want to be. To move around more, I recommend targeting 10,000 steps per day. This is a nice round number, and typically this is more steps than most people get on average. So pretty much by hitting 10K steps per day, then you're going to be moving around more, and that's going to basically increase the amount of calories you burn throughout the day. You can also start adding in cardio into your workout routine. I recommend doing cardio after your workouts as opposed to before. A huge mistake people make is they do cardio before their lift, and in turn this makes it so that they can lift less because they have less energy. So I personally recommend doing low intensity steady state cardio after your workouts. So this is something such as incline treadmill walking, ellipticals, stationary biking, pretty much something where your heart rate isn't too high and it's steady state. I like low intensity steady state cardio, aka list the best, because it's easy to do. You can watch Netflix or do something while you're doing it, which makes the time go by faster, and most importantly, you don't get sore from it, so it doesn't impact your leg workouts. And those 2 steps basically cover the nutrition component of building an aesthetic physique. Basically, step 1 is to add the clay, aka bulk, and then step 2 is the chip away, aka cut. So now when it comes to building muscle for your physique to make it more aesthetic, building muscle is actually a very simple process. You basically just need to eat enough, so be in a caloric surplus, and then lift more than last time. Implement progressive overload. The easiest way to implement progressive overload is to track your workouts. So basically write down how much weight you use for how many reps and how intense the set was, or something such as RPE, rate of perceived exertion, which is just a 1 to 10 scale of intensity. As you track your workouts, you can reference what you did last time and then just make it a goal to either do more reps or add weight. And by rinse and repeating this process, you're gonna build muscle. When it comes to your training split, or basically which workouts you actually do, I recommend choosing something based off of how many times per week you can work out. If you can work out 3 times per week, you could do something such as upper, lower, and full body. 4 times a week, you could do upper, lower, and then 5 times a week, you could do push, pull, legs, upper, lower. It doesn't really matter what you do on which day, as long as you're hitting each muscle group 2 times per week. In terms of which exercises to actually do, this also is personal preference and based off which equipment you have available, but there's really no one-size-fits-all solution, which is a little confusing because if you consume social media, you'll see all the time fitness influencers just saying like,
do this exercise or avoid that exercise.
It gets super confusing on like what works and what doesn't, but to be honest, there's really no right way to do it. Like obviously there are probably better exercises than worse exercises, but at the end of the day, it just matters about your mind-muscle connection or how well you can feel the contraction with each lift. In terms of my personal favorites, I'll just give you guys a few you could try out. So first I'll cover the V-taper, which is basically just your delt to waist ratio. For my delts, I like hitting any lateral raise variation. And then for my lats, I like doing any vertical pull down or straight arm cable pull down. For my chest, to develop that bookshelf chest, I like to incorporate incline dumbbell pressing, high to low cable fly for my lower chest, and then low to high cable fly for my upper chest. When it comes to abs, the most important point to get across is to do them weighted. Oftentimes people do these bodyweight ab exercises thinking you're gonna like burn off the fat, but that makes no sense since your abs are a muscle just like the rest of your body. So why wouldn't you treat it as such and train it with weighted exercises? So for me, I like to just alternate between upper ab exercise and lower ab exercise. A good upper ab exercise is rope crunches. And then for lower abs, I like to do reverse dumbbell crunches. And then last but not least, for legs, I like to do plate loaded leg press along with machine leg extension and leg curls, preferably lying leg curls. And you'll notice a lot of the exercises I mentioned aren't the big 4 like bench, squat, deadlift, overhead press. And for me, I just don't like doing those exercises because I feel like first they take too long to warm up. To do those exercises in the gym, it usually takes a while since you gotta wait for people to finish the equipment. And then last but not least, I just don't feel the best mind-muscle connection doing those exercises. So hopefully that shows you guys that there's really no right way to exercise and work out. It just comes down to what you like to do and which exercises and movements give you the best mind-muscle connection. And that's a wrap. The blueprint for building an aesthetic physique is actually quite simple. The important thing to remember is to stay consistent and keep at it for a long time, and your hard work will pay off as long as you're implementing my tips I highlighted in this video. But that's gonna do it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.